OpenAI just released GPT-5, their most advanced AI model to date. And this is just the latest in a series of recent releases. GPT-5 now joins Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.1 and X's Grok 4 in the current class of frontier AI models. The amount of intelligence in your pocket available today is insane. But the problem is you're probably not going to get the most out of these models. And it's not because these models aren't significantly better than the ones before, they are, but because the way you're using them is wrong. You see, the most advanced users of AI today are engineers, and it makes sense. These models were built with code, and so the coders know all the tricks to getting the most out of them. But you can steal their exact workflows to automate any task in your business, even if you can't code. In this video, I'm walking through a 5-step system for automating your business using the most cutting-edge tools available today. And to make it concrete, I'll be sharing my screen and walking you through the click-by-click process for automating YouTube titles. This is a specific example, but as you'll see, this process can be generalized to any knowledge-based task in your business. So let's dive in. All right, so the first thing to understand is the fundamental shift that's happening in AI today. The old way was what people called prompt engineering. If you've never heard of that term, it's just a fancy way of saying writing specific instructions for an AI to follow. The old way was for humans to get good at this process, in writing as detailed of instructions as humanly possible. And after writing a detailed document or a prompt, you hand it off to AI for the AI to execute. But the level of specificity, the details required, and the formatting are all things that humans often overlook. And what the most advanced users of AI have figured out is that you can just get the AI to write the prompts for you. And it turns out AI is way better at writing prompts than humans. And so the old way of prompt engineering is dead. The new way is called context engineering. This is where instead of writing the specific instructions yourself, you just gather the right data necessary for the AI to write the best instructions it can. So you go out into the world and gather the most valuable information you possibly can, and then feed it to AI and co-create the instruction set with it. This way, you only have to focus on curating the highest signal information that you can find and steering the model in such a way that it creates the best output possible. And this allows you to delegate the prompt optimization process to the AI, and it'll nail it way better than you could. And so your new job is to become the context engineer, where you're gathering the data that the model needs in order to do the best job possible. Imagine it like staring into the night sky. Two people can look up and see completely different constellations, even if they're looking at the same set of stars. This interpretation is what makes context engineering valuable. Everyone has access to the same information on the internet, but the constellations you see, or the dots that you connect, will determine what you're able to do with AI. You're no longer writing the instructions on your own, you're co-creating it with AI and ensuring that the instructions are derived from the most valuable sources possible. All right, so that's the fundamental shift from prompt engineering to context engineering. All right, now the way that you actually go about context engineering is walking through a 3-step process. First, it's information gathering, then it's synthesis, then task execution. In other words, collect dots, connect dots, codify dots. For the information gathering stage, what you're doing is you're trying to curate the best possible knowledge that you can find on the internet. In the synthesis stage, you're using AI to help you extract the relevant principles across all that data. And from those principles, you can craft a prompt that executes any given task. For task execution, you basically use that master prompt and specific context about the task that you're trying to accomplish in order to execute that task. And the important thing to note here is how you organize that information is going to determine everything. You want to treat this workflow as if it were a code base of knowledge. You're basically trying to give the AI the full context that engineers give to coding agents. This way, you're leveraging AI for what it's best at while maintaining human judgment for where it matters. So let's double click into each one of these stages, starting with information gathering. Here, you're collecting dots through progressive familiarization. Without familiarizing yourself in the domain first, you're going to be the blind leading the blind. This is because today's AI models work very similarly to how the brain has associative memory. For example, if we were to play a word association game, and I asked you, what's the first word that comes to mind when I say the word tree? You might think of bark, leaves, green. This is because those words or concepts are closely associated to the word tree in your brain. This is basically how today's AI models work, except they use math. And so the better that you know the relevant terms, the more precisely you can guide the AI models. And you do this by walking through a process that I call progressive familiarization. This is the process from going from a basic level of understanding to a deep expertise. The first step is to identify the players. If you want to perform at a world-class level, you have to find the people that are already doing that and learn from them. So find who's doing the thing that you want to automate at the highest level. You want to start with the best in the world. And fortunately, a lot of these people create content. So what you want to do is you want to map the network. You do this by visiting their social media profiles, seeing who they follow and who follows them, track who they engage and collaborate with, who they reference, and who they look up to. This will give you a base level understanding of the knowledge ecosystem around a given topic. You can look on YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and niche communities on Discord and subreddits. You want to avoid SEO optimized junk. You want to find real practitioners that are actually doing the thing and learn from them directly. Step 2 is to learn the base terms. If the players are the who, then the base terms are the what. Here you want to learn the common terms, jargon, and conceptual building blocks that they use to discuss with each other. These terms will allow you to search for additional information with the right terms. And the more relevant and specific terms you have, the better that you can trigger the associations within the AI. This is the difference between playing that word association game and giving the AI the word bark instead of stem, when you're actually looking for stem. That level of specificity is lost when you use overgeneralized terms. But this process will help you get there. And a note here is that you don't need to develop expertise, you just need to know enough terms to ask the next question. Step 3 is where you dive into specifics. If the players are the who and the base terms are the what, then the specifics are the how and the why. This is where you begin to use AI as a thought partner to go deep. Use the base level understanding that you've gathered through your search and ask the AI specific questions about how you can understand it more. What you're trying to do here is you're trying to extract the details that will matter for the outputs that you're looking for. You can go as deep as you want here, but you only need to go as deep as needed for the task at hand. That's the information stage, collecting dots. For the synthesis stage, here's where you connect dots and codify insights. Once you have your curated knowledge base, synthesis happens in multiple steps. The first step is to extract universal principles. You do this by feeding the AI the entire knowledge base that you spend time curating. You want to ask it to extract universal principles that explain cause-effect relationships and give you higher predictive power in the explanations that you hold. This is where you ask the AI to extract the principles across all of the information that you've gathered. What you're looking for here is clear cause-effect logic that explains how things work. If it allows you to predict the future better than you did before, then you're on the right track. And so your role here in the synthesis step is to ensure that the AI has the proper data that it needs to extract the best principles possible. And at the same time, you want to use your judgment to steer the model in the right way. If it's deriving principles that don't make sense, let it know. Step 2 here is to use that synthesis to create a master prompt. The output of step 1 is a document with a full synthesis of all of the data points. Now that you have that, you want to ask the AI to use that document to create a prompt so that you can replicate similar outputs. This will become your reusable master prompt that allows you to automate that task. So that's the synthesis stage. In the task execution stage, this is where you run the prompt with specific context. Now that you have a reusable master prompt, you can give the AI specific context about the specific task that you're trying to complete right now. If you created a master prompt that contains all the principles on how to generate YouTube titles, you use that prompt along with the specific context for what your next YouTube title should be about. By combining general knowledge with specific context, you get the best outcome possible. So that's the process: information, synthesis, task execution. In other words, collect dots, connect dots, codify dots, act. But the problem with this shift from prompt engineering to context engineering is that all AI interfaces have previously been built around the concept of prompt engineering. The chatbot that you talk with is just not the right interface to have the full context that you need in context engineering. A chat is just a single thread with limited context. And if you're an advanced user, you might be using projects where you can drag and drop files into your chat window. But even that is flawed. For example, you can't edit uploaded files, you can't organize them cleanly so that the AI can find them reliably, and it's difficult to upload new files and maintain the structure. But engineers do this completely differently. They'll use tools like integrated development environments like Cursor, or command line interfaces like Claude Code. Now, those terms might be confusing, but they're just programs that allow AI assistants to access folders and files on your computer. With access to all the files and the folders on your computer, an engineer can provide an AI assistant the entire codebase, relevant examples, documentation, and more in a very simple interface. And this gives the models the complete context that they need in order to do their job well. And so the opportunity here is to walk through that information synthesis task execution process through the lens of how engineers do it, where in the information gathering process, you organize all your files and folders in such a way that makes it easy for the AI to access. You're basically treating your knowledge base like a code base. And currently, I'm not seeing many non-engineers do this. So let me walk you through the specific 5 steps that you can take in order to do this for yourself. At a high level, the 5 steps are collect dots, connect dots, codify, test internally, then test externally. Let's dive into each step. For step 1, where you're collecting dots, this is where you're curating high signal data. You're walking through that progressive familiarization process and trying to identify the absolute best sources of knowledge on the internet on a given topic. And you want to make sure that you're saving this information in a way that's easily digestible by the AI. Engineers do this very well, and later I'll share my screen and show you how you can do this even if you're non-technical. Step 2 is where you're connecting dots, and this is where synthesis happens. What you do is ask AI simple questions, trying to map patterns across them all, identify universal principles or the exact step-by-step specifics for how the top performers are doing what they're doing. What you're looking for is patterns, principles, and insights that will help guide you when you're trying to write the prompt. Step 3 is codify. This is where you're crafting the master prompt. The output of the previous step is a consolidated document with all the principles and relevant information that you need to craft the best prompt possible. What I would do here is I would also go to OpenAI or Anthropic's documentation on best prompt engineering practices, just copy and paste it into your chat, and ask the AI to use both the best prompt engineering practices and your knowledge base to craft the best prompt possible. By doing this, you're giving the AI the what and the why, not just the how. For step 4, you're testing internally. You're going to run that prompt with the specific context that you have to complete a given task and try to evaluate the output based on what your expectations are. Ideally, you have a high quality bar and that the AI exceeds that quality bar. If it doesn't, you're going to have to tweak the prompt or go all the way back to the original data sources and figure out what's missing, what's contradictory, or what's just confusing about the whole thing that's making the prompt not that good. The best way to evaluate whether a prompt is good or not is to understand what you're looking for. Often people just go with gut feeling, but that's not going to help you. All you're going to know is that you didn't like a given output. But until you're able to articulate why, it's going to be very difficult to get to a good output. This whole process of testing internally is just to get the output to meet your quality bar. You're identifying and closing the gaps between what you expect and what you're getting by adjusting the context and the prompt. Step 5 is to test externally. This is where you restart the loop and collect more data. Once your outputs meet your quality bar, you can attempt your first automation of a given task. If it performs well in the real world, that gives you more data to evaluate the effectiveness of your prompts. If it underperforms, there are things that you can fix. What you want to do here is ensure that you're building a repeatable loop so that the quality compounds over time. So that's the 5-step process. Collect dots, connect dots, codify, test internally, test externally. Now I'm going to share my screen and walk through a specific example of automating YouTube titles. Once you see the process in action, it'll click and you'll understand how you can generalize it to other tasks in your business. All right, so this is the primary chat interface for all the leading AI models today. You notice that it's just the chat, so it's very limited. You can't really do much with it. There is some additional features like projects where you can actually drop files into this. So for example, if I go here and I add a new file, so I add text from content, this is note 3. And this is a third note. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm adding files to this project where the AI right here can reference these files. And so this actually is a little bit more powerful than the original chat interface because the chat interface here basically only has the context that you give it inside the chat. Whereas here, a project, you can actually give it files with a bunch of more information, knowledge, examples, etc. And all 3 of these chat companies or the AI model companies have project functionality. And so they all have it. But the problem here is, again, that you can't really go into the file and edit it. So for example, if I want to update something here, I can't do that. And so that becomes pretty limiting pretty quickly. I can't reorganize stuff. I can't put it into folders so that I can give the AI the exact note. So if I wanted to reference note 3, for example, specifically, I can't do that here. And so again, this is pretty limited. And what I want to share with you is that you can actually give it the files and folders that are on your computer to give the AI basically a very curated set of context. And so the way that we're going to do this is by using what is known as a command line interface. And currently, only OpenAI and Anthropic have command line interface tools. You can't use Grok with the command line interface through xAI. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you what a command line interface tool looks like and then what that actually means in terms of what you can do with these AI models. And so here on the left is what we have for OpenAI. OpenAI Codex is how they're branding their CLI tool. And then on the right, we have Claude Code, which is the current popular command line interface tool from an AI model developer. So the way that you actually use the command line interface tools here is by doing a very simple command in your computer. And don't worry, if you're not technical, this is not going to be very difficult. As you can see, the only thing that you really need to do is just type in these words into your command line, and you can actually just copy it from right here. So this is just npm install, and then this stuff here. And then the way that you run it is by just typing codecs here. Similarly, for Claude Code, the way that you would do that here too is the same thing. You would just type or npm install this, and then you run it through Claude. Cool. So I mentioned how Grok currently is not available through a command line interface tool. I actually lied. So Cursor, which is the leading code editor tool, actually has their own CLI or command line interface product, and they call it Cursor CLI. And again, you see the same pattern here. All you have to do is type in this very specific command onto your computer, and then you just run the CLI tool through this command right here. And so all of these command line interface tools are exactly the same. I would actually argue that Claude Code is currently the best of the CLI tools, and so that's what we'll be using. But fundamentally, the exact same setup is used for all of them. What you end up doing is logging in through their portal, and then you can actually get it set up to run on your computer. Okay, so the way that you would do this is by opening up a terminal. This is the terminal, and it looks a little bit scary if you are non-technical, but trust me, we're not going to do much. All we need to do is learn these two commands, cd and ls. CD stands for changing directory. This is basically navigating through the folders in your computer. LS is just listing the folders that are in the computer at the level that you're at right now. So for example, if I were to write out LS and just type enter, you can see all of the files in my computer at this level. This is equivalent to basically just opening up your Mac Finder if you're on Windows. It's just basically your desktop, your folders structure, and going into like downloads and documents. I've hidden a lot of folders just because I like to keep my computer pretty clean and minimal. But this is equivalent to basically what I'm doing here in the terminal. So if I open up the terminal again and I CD, so I change directory into the documents folder, for example, and I go ahead and I ls again, you'll notice that the two folders here, demo and organized documents, is the exact same ones that we see here, right? Demo and organized documents. So this is fundamentally just navigating through your Finder or your folder, your files through just text. And so I'm going to do another one. So if I ls, again, we have demo and organized documents. And then if I change directory into the demo, and then I list again, then you can see all of the files that we're going to be working with in the folder, right? And so again, if I open up demos, you can see all of the same files here. So those are the only two technical commands that you need to learn for your terminal. That and being able to just like copy paste. So if you know how to copy paste, you should be good. You would just basically just copy paste here and then just hit enter. And then the actual program for downloading the OpenAI Codex CLI onto your computer just runs. Now I've already done this, and so it's not gonna like do much, but if I were to run Codex, like right here, I just type in the word Codex, it'll give you a prompt. If you're doing this for the first time, it'll like get you to sign in through OpenAI. You don't have to like do API key stuff, because if you just sign in through that, then you're good. You could also do your API key stuff, but that's outside the scope of this video. But basically I just go ahead and do that, and then basically have an AI right here in my terminal. So that's the core of how the CLI tools work. They're just basically bringing their AI assistants directly into your computer, and it has access to everything there. Oh, the last thing that you want to learn is Control-C on Mac. I don't know what it would be on Windows, but Control-C goes ahead and exits you out of whatever program is running. So that's all you need to know from just a technical standpoint. So it's LS to list things, CD to change, and then you want to do Control-C to back out. I'm going to clear. There's also another one if you want. You can clear stuff to just like clean up your terminal. So a note that I want to share here is that with the OpenAI Codex CLI, you can only use OpenAI's models. And then for the Claude Code, you can only use Anthropic's models. I think there might be workarounds to be able to access different models using either CLI tool, but they're not designed to be that way. And so your best bet is to use Claude or Anthropic's models with the Claude Code and OpenAI's models with OpenAI Codex. However, Cursor, because they do, they're not an AI model creator. They actually just develop the tools for developers to be able to access these models better. And so you can actually use any model with a Cursor CLI. And so if I were to go ahead and run this, you'll see here, if I just run Cursor Agent, again, I've already done the setup step. So if you haven't done the setup step, just copy paste this directly into your terminal. So I'm going to go ahead and run Cursor Agent here. Now, again, I'm going to type hi just to demonstrate that I have the AI assistant here directly in my computer. And it's thinking the downside to the Cursor CLI that I've found is that because it's not as natively integrated, they didn't develop the AI model, for example, that this tool is actually a bit slower than you would get if you were to use the direct CLI tool developed by the model maker. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to clear out because you need to exit in order to change the model. So you can actually see here on my computer that I can change from Opus, which is an Anthropic model, to GPT-5, which is OpenAI, right? And so I can change the models. And though it's asking me to change, to exit out basically in order to do that. So if I were to go again, Cursor Agent, also if you just type the up arrow right here, you can access previously executed code. So just Cursor Agent. And then I go in and I do model. I can go ahead and switch from Opus 4.1 to Sonnet 4 to GPT-5. So whatever you want to use, you can go ahead and use any model. That's what makes the Cursor CLI kind of more of a flexible tool, because dependent on the task at hand, you might want to use whatever AI model is best for that. For me personally, I've tried Codex. Codex is not as advanced in terms of like a feature set as Claude Code is. Claude Code is just currently the best model for accessing files, the right context, and just planning thoroughly. It's just well in advance in terms of the CLI feature set. If I go into the developer docs, and this is partially a thing that you'll have to learn if you want to use the models to the most advanced use case possible, is by just reading developer documentation. That's just a part of having to really be on the cutting edge here. So the way that you start this is by running Claude. I'm going to go ahead and proceed. And just a note here is that this agent right now is currently basically trapped inside of a folder that I've named a demo. So it doesn't have access to the rest of my computer. It only has access to what it can see here in this demo folder that I've created. And so that's just a heads up. You want to be a little bit careful with the amount of access that you grant to these models, because they can go in and actually like delete your files if you enable it, right? And they actually do have safeguards. And so, for example, if I were to hit Shift Tab, this is auto accept edits on. This is dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, because what auto accept edits on means is that the AI model will not ask you for any permission to save anything. Basically, it will edit your files, it will delete things, it will move stuff around, and it doesn't have to ask you. So I recommend not doing that and just either doing it in the default mode or do the plan mode. Plan mode is just, it's not editing any files. It's not, doing any sort of file modifications. It's more just thinking out loud and planning so that you can iterate on what it's supposed to do. And so to emulate a chat-like interface, I'm actually going to go ahead and expand this, and we're actually going to zoom in just a little bit. And then I'm going to show you the tool that I like to use in order to access the files in the folders in a way that's pretty easily digestible. But in order to do that, first I need to show you what to do AI engineers, or just engineers in general, how do they use these AI models to do their work more efficiently when it comes to programming and building software. So previously I mentioned Cursor. Cursor is a code editor that's basically just a fancy folder file interface where you basically just edit code files like a Google Doc. And so I'm going to go ahead and actually demonstrate this with the example notes that I have. And so I have these 3 random notes. I'm going to actually open this with Cursor because I already have this downloaded. If you don't have this downloaded and are curious about it, go ahead and download it for whatever computer that you have. But you can basically just open it up. So I'm going to open this up with Cursor, and then you can see that I can just edit it. So this is a note, and now this is an edited note. And so I just save it and I close it out. I reopen it. It's been saved, right? And so that's pretty much cut and dry. It's just a text editor, right? But if I were to open the whole folder inside of Cursor, or actually I'm going to do it through this way. So if I were to close this out, I can actually go ahead and open a project. So I'm going to go ahead and open this project here, notes, And you'll see that the folder at the top here, notes, still contains all of my folders, right? And so I can see inside each text document, these are all marked down. So .md means markdown. I can go ahead and just edit this as needed, right? So again, this is like the tool that not all of them, but this is the most famous and leading tool for programmers to really gain some efficiencies with the coding process. And the reason is this. It's because if I were to go ahead and do a full screen here, I'm actually going to open the side panel. So I'm going to open up a new chat. So right here, what we have is on the left, right, this is the actual note. So again, we're inside just a regular folder on our computer. These are regular notes. They're just marked down, which is a format of, it's easier to read for machines. And here, the AI on the right actually has access to the window on the left. So if I were to ask the AI here, what do you see? And here it can actually access, you can see it. Here it can access, I can see you have notes workspace with 3 markdown files. It has this one, and it knows that it's currently open. And then it has these 2 other files, right? And so let's say, what is in note 3? Now it's reading it. It's reading note 3. Okay, note 3 contains, lastly, this is my last note, edited. Let's open up note 3. Lastly, this is my last note, edited, right? So this is pretty straightforward. Basically, what you have is a powerful text editor with an AI assistant here on the right. Now, the way that we want to do this, because we're not using, they have a bunch of other features, right? That is code dependent. This is a dedicated tool for building software. And there's a lot of things that if we're just trying to manipulate knowledge bases, right? We don't need a whole code base and all of the functionality associated with that. And so the best way to emulate this sort of workflow is by using a very simple tool that is Obsidian. So Obsidian is basically just like an Apple Notes or just a regular note taker, but it's local on your machine. So it's just a bunch of markdown files inside of your computer. So again, these markdown files are all just very regular text files that you can open and edit, right? And so Obsidian, and this is the link here, obsidian.md, you go ahead and you just get Obsidian for Mac OS, you download it, and then you actually see this software here. This is the interface for Obsidian. So we're inside of Obsidian. And when you create a new note, this is just a new note. And then you just type some content in here. And then what happens is on your actual computer, if we were to go back out, we can see that this new note has been created. Let me do that one more time so you can see that. So if we create a new note, I'm going to create this by clicking this tab as if I'm opening up a new browser window. I go ahead and create a new note. This is next note. And then I go back into my Finder and I can actually see that I have the untitled note that I created and then the next note. And so again, this is a very simple tool. So this is how we've emulated slightly, right? Like we have the note here, we have the note here. What we're missing though is we're missing this AI assistant on the right. The best way to do this is to go ahead and take the terminal that we have with, Claude is in here. So let's say hi to Claude. Claude will come back to us with a response. And what I actually like to do is I like to just place it right on the right side of this Obsidian editor, right? And so now Claude is in here. It has access to all my folders. I'm going to ask it, what's inside notes? And you can see that if I do the @ button here, it has access to all of the notes inside this database. And to actually make this clear, if I were to expand the sidebar here, we have the same folder structure as we do have in, let me do this again. We have the same folder structure, right? We're inside of demo. There's Claude outputs, example scripts, notes, new note. It's the same structure here. Claude outputs, example scripts, notes. It's the same thing. It's basically just a better interface for interfacing with your text notes. And so what's inside notes? I'm going to ask it. This is the exact same question, remember, that I asked inside of cursor right here. What's inside notes? Here you see it says the notes directory contains 3 markdown files, note 1, note 2, note 3. What's inside note 3? I can ask it just like that, or I can actually tag the note itself. So if I were to go into note 3 and it goes ahead and opens it, reads it up, and then lets me know what's inside of note 3. Yep. Lastly, this is my last note. Now, if you can see this is a very powerful tool for a ton of reasons. And the reason is that with this setup, you can basically give it whatever context that you need in pretty much infinite sort of Lego brick composition. So if each one of these pages, for example, is a Lego brick, you can give Claude Code, you can give ChatGPT, GPT-5, and Grok 4, if it's available via API, I believe it is. But you can give these AI models all the context and any sort of configuration you can imagine, which is great. So let's walk through the actual tactical way to use this workflow to generate YouTube titles with the best principles that we can find on the internet. So going back through our process of information, synthesis, and task execution, the first step is to find the right information. So how are we going to do that? Well, you would do it like you would learning anything else. Progressive familiarization of who are the best players in the space and what they're talking about, who they're following, what the base terms are, all of those things. To make this video shorter, I'm actually just going to go ahead and skip a ton of these steps and mostly just demonstrate the actual workflow itself. So let's go in and search up YouTube titles. This is something that I would do if I were to try to figure out, okay, if I want to figure out how to automate YouTube titles, who is talking about YouTube titles and what are they saying about it? So I would go to YouTube, I would type in the search term YouTube titles, and I see that I have a handful of videos here that are available for me to learn from. And so I'll go ahead and click into one of these videos, and I can actually go in, if you expand the description and you go into show transcript, I'm going to go ahead and toggle off the timestamps. You can actually just grab any sort of transcript here, copy it, open up your favorite AI chat tool. You actually don't have to do this step. I enjoy doing this step because it just helps me structure the transcripts a little bit more, because if you get it straight from YouTube, it looks like this. So this is not very readable. Like, I can't read it. And what I like to do is I actually like asking Grok 3 specifically. I found it to be super fast to just format the transcript such that each line is in a new sentence and that it's a little bit more well formatted. So I'll go ahead and just type that and hit enter. I'll give you the actual secret sauce though. I go ahead and I just copy this URL, and I have a script that I run through Raycast. So that's actually another thing, Raycast. This is a very, very good tool to download onto your computer if you want to use your computer to its fullest in just the most efficient way. It basically will just replace the Spotlight search that's a default on your Mac. I highly recommend it. But basically, you can create scripts for this stuff. And so I'm going to go ahead and say, let's get the transcript of this video. And then I have this script running. It's basically doing the exact same thing that I'm doing right here, right? Except Grok sometimes takes a while. Some of these AI models take a while. And so I just like having that script running in the back. But fundamentally, it's just doing the exact same thing. And so as we wait for that to happen, let's go back over into Obsidian. I'm actually going to close out Cursor. This is fundamentally what programmers are using. I just wanted to show that to you, but you don't need to dive deep into that world yet. But now that we're back in Obsidian, what we're going to find is we're going to find if my script worked correctly, and it should. In a matter of seconds, we'll see the window here on the left actually open up to the transcript that we've saved into this file and directory. If people are interested in the exact script that I wrote in order to actually just extract a transcript and save it into your Obsidian Vault, I can go ahead and link that in the description as well, or create another video. Okay. The script is finished running. And so now we have the full transcript for a video that's covering, the first principles of how do you write a great title. And so this is Aprilyn Alter. Shout out to Aprilyn. She has really great content, really great takes on how to write YouTube titles. Again, I liked this format. This is why I asked Grok to do it. Let's even see if Grok is finished with it. It looks like Grok is not. Okay, it is. It just didn't. And so this is the same thing, right? So you can actually just do it inside of your code editor. I just like to run a script because it's a little faster, but it's fundamentally the same thing. And so we can see here's the hook, here's the different sections. So mistake 1 is not giving a reason to click. And so mistake 2 is not using proven formats. And I actually like to go ahead and collapse some of these just so I can see at a high level, what are they saying, using boring words, being too wordy, right? Like these are all great things. And so Aprilyn's not the only one that has, a take on like how to write great YouTube titles. So does this person here, who's been interviewed by Jay Klaus and Think Media as well. So there are a lot of creators that deeply know this problem space and how to write really great titles. And so why not leverage all of their insights and synthesize them and replicate that at a much higher level. Because the alternative is, right, if we were to go into one of these just generic chats, we'll just ask Claude, for example, just because it's the one in the middle, generate 15 YouTube titles about automating YouTube titles with AI. And then if I just hit that, it's just going to give me a very generic response, right? And so these titles are probably not going to be as good as the ones that we'll create in a second. How I generate 100 viral YouTube titles in 5 minutes using AI, right? Like these are pretty generic. They're not as good, but because we're going to go ahead and scrape all of these transcripts, we're going to collect them into a directory, a folder, and just use that as context. And so I've already gone ahead and done that. So if we were to go into YouTube title resources, this is a folder that I have with a bunch of videos that I've gone ahead and saved. And so we have a ton of very interesting and valuable information. Obviously, like going through the progressive familiarization is critical here, because then you would understand that like April and Alter has been in this space. Think Media has been in the space for years. TubeBuddy is a tool, right? Like I don't recognize a couple of these other creators. I've seen Nate Black a couple of times, Jay Klaus, for example, great insights. And so I presume that Jake Thomas is also very knowledgeable in the space, although I don't personally know him or have come across his content. But you want to go through the process of really understanding the space, at least like who's doing it at a high level. Because if those people are doing it at a high level and they're able to articulate how they do what they do and why, then and create that content for free and put it on YouTube, you have an immense amount of gold to be able to derive principles to help inform your strategies and how you approach title creation and stuff. And fundamentally what we're doing here, right, is this is the exact process that a human being would need to go through in order to learn a given skill, right? The only thing that we're doing here is we're curating this learning path for the AI so that it can just like do it in immediate one shot. And so we have all of these transcripts, right? And so the next step to do is basically just ask the AI. I'm going to do this in a very simplistic manner just to show you how simple it is. And then I'll show you like some different outputs that I got recently. But basically I have all of these titles, right? So if I were to grab this and throw this in there, I already have this transcript. So I'm actually going to delete this one because it's a duplicate. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 different creators talking about how to create YouTube titles and breaking down their synthesis and their understanding of like what really makes killer titles. One last tip here, pro tip. If you download Whisperflow, it's a new, it's basically like a transcription tool that allows you to just press the function button on your keyboard, and then it just, like the keyboard just picks it up. So watch this. If I say words, it'll just appear into the text box. This just makes it such that speaking is much faster than typing, and I can just like go ahead and do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask Claude to go ahead and take all of the folders inside of YouTube title resources and create a synthesis documentation on all the first principles. And so the way that you word it is going to trigger the AI model in such a way. And so I like using the word first principles because it helps the AI model think through, okay, what are the actual base universal laws that we can apply broadly? And so I'm going to go ahead and ask Claude, can you go into the YouTube titles of resources folder and thoroughly analyze all of the transcripts? These are transcripts from creators that have broken down the fundamentals for how to create compelling YouTube titles. What I want you to do is I want you to create a document that synthesizes the first principles of all of these videos and compile it into a document that we can use as the basis for a master prompt that we will use to help us create our own YouTube titles. And so this is actually a good enough message as it is, but we can help it by just like giving it YouTube title resources like as the folder. Like I'll just go ahead and tag it so that it knows exactly where to look. So I'm going to go ahead and click enter. And then Claude is going to go ahead, this is Anthropic's model. Claude, it's using Opus 4.1, is going to go ahead and read through all of those files and do exactly what I mentioned. So it's going to go ahead and analyze. You can see that it's planning it out, right? So it's saying that first it's going to read and analyze all of the YouTube title transcripts. Then it's going to extract the key principles and patterns from all the transcripts. Then it's going to synthesize all the common themes and then create comprehensive documentation with the master prompt framework, and it's just going to do exactly what I'm asking it to do. One thing that I failed to mention is that I have a file called proven title formats. And this is actually basically an Excel sheet or a Google sheet of all of these titles that I've seen work. What I've done is I've analyzed a ton of outliers and I've extracted winning formats. And so if that is a resource that you all want, I actually will have this hosted in my free community whenever I end up launching that. It is an application-based community. We really want established entrepreneurs, established creators going in and just talking about the latest and greatest inside of AI, content creation, and digital business. And so go ahead and look at the links in the description to join that. And I'll be posting all of this stuff in there as well. So Claude is about finished up. I think it's going through 2 more tasks here, but what it's going to do is creating a file and it's asking for permission so that I can write the file. And I'm going to say, yes, you can write the file. So let's actually see what Claude went ahead and wrote up. So here's the executive summary. There are some first principles here. This looks interesting. Curiosity. I'm a little bit familiar with like title generation. So like this seems about clear. We have Alex Hormozzi's value equation here that I think one of the creators referenced in their videos. And so here we are. Wonderful. Great. We have a pretty solid synthesis across a bunch of different videos, which probably would have taken us a couple hours to watch each video, take notes, be able to like extract the synthesis, stuff like that. This just one-shotted it in maybe 30 seconds, a minute. So now we have a very thorough document here that we can leverage to generate a prompt. So this is the crux of context engineering. I didn't write anything. All I did was collect the right data, put it in a way that it's accessible to the AI model, and had the AI model go ahead and use it to generate the documentation that it needed. All right, so now what we're going to do is generate a prompt using this information. Usually the way that most people go about doing this is trying to write the prompt themselves, but the problem with this is that there's a lot of best practices that they're probably not adhering to. And something like Anthropic prompt engineering best practice. We'll just go into the prompt engineering overview. This is a resource that Anthropic, the creator of Claude, literally one of the frontier AI models, has created so that others using their model can get the best out of their AIs. And so what you can do is basically just copy this page and hand it to the AI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the AI, can you use this information to generate a very thorough prompt so that we can generate the best YouTube titles possible? What I'm going to do is I'm also going to give you documentation on how to write prompts. Here is the link. You actually don't necessarily need to copy the page and like send it to them. You can just grab this and drop it in. And what's cool is that Claude and a bunch of these other models also have the ability to just crawl that page, read it, and then jump into other links. So for example, this page itself is like not very thorough, but it has all these links to everything else. And so like using XML tags, for example, this is basically like some formatting things that just make it easier for the AI model to know where certain sections in your prompt start and end. And so for example, I doubt that the average person is using XML tags in their prompts. They're probably just like, hey, can you just, generate YouTube titles for me, right? What we did here, right? So this is what we did. Instead, what I'm going to do is, hey, we have the first principles of how to generate really great YouTube titles from some really great creators. And we also have the world's best documentation on prompt engineering from the actual AI model provider. I'm going to look at if OpenAI prompt engineering guidelines. Yep. See, they also have it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this as well. And then let's see if that's enough. So can you use this information to generate a very thorough prompt so that we can generate the best YouTube titles possible? What I'm going to do is I'm also going to give you documentation on how to write the prompts. One thing that I also want to add to this is, here's the link. I'm going to add another thing to this, which is make the prompt flexible enough so that I can just drop raw notes and the AI can use that context to generate the YouTube titles along with all of the best practices that we've collected and written in a format that is following the best practices for prompt engineering. I just used the tool Whisperflow, and now I'm just going to hit that enter button. And what Claude is going to go ahead and do, and again, any AI model will be able to do this for you. I've just found that Claude Code as a command line interface tool is currently the best that there is out there. Cursor's tool just came out. They're still probably working on a lot of features there. I have tested it and compared it to Claude Code, and Claude Code is just way faster. It does this like extra planning step that's really helpful. Like the outputs are just way, way better. So definitely use Claude Code if you can. I think you would have to, for all of these models, you're going to have to pay for the subscription, but it's completely worth it. Like having a really cracked developer on your team is just worth way more than the $200 I spend. You don't have to spend the $200. You can just start with the $20 a month plan, but the $200 per month plan gives you Anthropic's max plan. I think it's, if we were to do Anthropic max plan, Claude Max, Claude Code Max plan. I would definitely do the 200. Like it's a no-brainer at this point. This is the best that you can get at this current state. So it's going and it is attempting to read this, but it's failing. I don't know what's going on there. Sometimes you need to rerun it or like ask it to do it again, but it's already generated a master prompt. So I'm going to go ahead. What it's asking me to do is to confirm if it can create this doc. And so I'm going to say, go ahead and create it. So now we have the YouTube title generator master prompt. And in a real workflow, I would spend some time at each step. Ideally, what you're doing is using your best judgment to both identify the most advanced or world-class people in the field. You just want the best information possible. So that's one step. Then you want to curate that information. So here what I did is I just dumped all of the video transcripts, but the video transcripts are like, they could be compressed quite a bit, right? Like I could have done an extra step in between so that I don't just have video transcripts. I have very condensed versions of these transcripts so that I can just stuff either way more transcripts or I can just like extract the actual value that's hidden within each of these transcripts. Because let's be real, like creators, they'll just create like fluff to just make their videos a little bit more engaging, right? And so they'll have like the hook, for example. We don't really need that. Like what we want is like the actual takeaways. And they're like the takeaways are just hidden in all of these words. And so the more dialed in that you can get with the information source and like the quality, the signal, the value, the better. Ideally, you're stepping in and you're using your judgment to like really refine and steer the AI model so that it's set up best for success. And so that's kind of like the real differentiator. It's like the context engineering comes down to not just like, yes, you are like slightly steering the model to write the best prompt possible, but really like you're using your own sort of intuition and like understanding of the space to really like craft the best possible prompts and outputs possible, right? So like even with this first principles, I would go in, I would like really evaluate, like, is this true or not? Does this align with what I believe, given the things that I believe the world to work, right? And so I think the closer to that and like the more that you use AI not as a crutch or as a tool to just like replace your thinking, but rather to amplify your thinking and really like push your own thinking forward in terms of contradict my most hot take. And then it gives you all of the reasons why. It like sharpens your thinking. So ideally you're using it in that way and not just like to generate the prompts and like not do anything, right? And so that's just a caveat there that you're going to be involved heavily, ideally, at each step, because this is really high leverage work. If you get a really nice prompt here, like you can reuse this for months, at least until the AI models sort of give us a new strategy. And now here comes the fun part. What we're going to do is we're going to take this prompt and then we're going to take the notes that I have for actually this YouTube video that I haven't generated a title for yet. And I am going to ask it to help me generate titles for my upcoming video. So let's look at what we got here. So I'm going to go ahead and say, great, now use this prompt to generate 15 YouTube titles for my upcoming video, which you can find the outline script for in C10. So C10 is just my naming convention for my scripts and outlines. So I'm going to go ahead and hit return. And what it's going to do is it's going to use all of this information, and it still has all the context of this entire conversation, and it's going to read my script. So this is the current script that I have for this video, right? Like I'm walking through YouTube title creation, tactics, like we're currently in this step here. I don't follow it to a T. This video is unique in that like it's just more free flowing because I'm sharing my screen here, but it's, it gets the context needed. And so now what it's doing, it's reading this script and it has the master prompt and it's going to go ahead and create 15 YouTube titles. Now let's analyze these titles. The first option is engineers hide this AI secret, steal this workflow. Stop writing AI prompts, do this instead. I automated my $1 million business in 5 steps. GPT-5 changes everything. Context engineering guide. This one is not good because no one knows what context engineering is, but why coders dominate AI. The 5-step, your AI prompts suck. Here's what actually works. How engineers use versus how you use it. I stole the developer AI workflow. Automate any business task with this AI framework. So there's actually still a lot to be desired from the output here, but what we can do here, and we're not finished here. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to take all of these title options. Now we're in step 4. So if step 1 was collect the dots, that's what we did. We went through on YouTube. We found the creators talking about this. We went ahead and transcribed it with AI. I just had this formatted. So we collected the dots. We asked the AI to help us synthesize this. And truth be told, like I probably should have done a little bit more thorough of a deep dive into this document to make sure that it's actually like polished and well thought out. And then we used this synthesis doc to generate the prompt. So that was step 3. So we went from collect dots to connect dots to codify. This is the codification process here with the master prompt. This is actuating or making knowledge actionable. Now what we're doing is we're actually testing this internally. So what we've done is we've generated this list of 15 titles. And to be fair, like I'm not entirely convinced that this is the best that we can do. So what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to ask the AI, now evaluate your outputs and think from first principles as to why these are great or why they're not great. And again, given that this is a demo, I probably would have done something a little bit deeper than that. I probably would have looked at like, are there other people on like X that are talking about this? Like, how do you evaluate titles? And again, like I have a proven format database that I can also reference to. So these are all things that you have to like kind of play with to get to the best possible result. But what I'm doing right here is I'm allowing the AI to go ahead and analyze its own work. And if there are certain things that I notice that are very clear, so for example, I could give it a pointer that like context engineering is just not a term that anybody knows, right? And so that's a really bad title. And so I could have added it to here, which I can, but this process isn't like a one and done sort of deal. It's like a back and forth iterative refinement. And so the step 4, where you're testing it internally, all you're trying to do is to get the outputs to meet your quality bar. And so let's see here. It generated this new doc. And so it's evaluation here. So what it's saying is that this is, okay, so it's a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 6 out of 10. So it's giving it a pretty bad score, right? And so what I'm going to say is, given this assessment, update our master prompt. And so this is kind of a back and forth that you go ahead and do. And you want to do this a handful of times until, again, like I mentioned, the titles that you generate or whatever it is that you're automating, that the output becomes the thing that you are proud of to put out into the world, right? Or whatever it is. Like it needs to meet your quality bar. Now, the thing that will trip a lot of people up, and the reason why a lot of people think that AI isn't good, it's 2 things. One is they don't know what good looks like. You can't actually get a good output if you don't know what good looks like. So that's number 1. First step is know what good looks like. The second step is to understand how something is good. Like what makes something good? Why is it good? So to be able to articulate exactly why something is good and why something is bad is really helpful when you're trying to do this iterative process back and forth with AI. If you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know what to look for, it's going to be really hard for you to actually output quality results. And so that's actually the point of AI. AI isn't going to go ahead and like make average people above average. It's just going to amplify whatever it is that they have, right? So the greatest at whatever domain that they're good at are just going to become even better, right? And so that's kind of like the point of it. You want to amplify your knowledge with AI, because if you don't understand what you're looking for, you're just going to be, again, the blind leading the blind. Cool. So now we've gone ahead and asked AI to evaluate and update the prompt. So now we're back here in the prompt. And so now we're going to say, Okay, now try again with the new prompt. And we're about wrapped up with the full process, but this is basically it, right? Like you collected the dots, you connected them, you codified it into a master prompt, and then you tested this internally a couple of times, really evaluating each step of the funnel. So if the information is not good, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. If the actual first principles that you derive, the synthesis that you create is not good, that's going to be garbage. If the prompt itself is not good, the output will be garbage. And so there's all of these steps that in order to really have a high quality output, each one of them needs to be dialed. And again, if you don't know what you're looking for, how it works, why it works, it's going to be really tough for you to really get these models to output something worthy. And so this is the game. After you go ahead and get to the point where you are meeting your quality bar from like the internal testing standpoint, then I would go ahead and create a title that I generated from AI. And now I have an asset that will continue to generate titles for me forever, basically. This is the worst that AI models will be. And at this point, like I will have an automated title generator. So let's look at what it created for this V2. Cool. Context engineering, how developers actually use AI. So this, again, if I had told the AI, hey, don't use context engineering as a term because this is a vague term, like this doesn't have a high TAM or total addressable market. These are things, right, that require nuance and understanding in order to get it right. Why AI prompts fail, the context method. I give AI my entire knowledge base. That's not horrible. From prompts to context. I automated YouTube with the developer method. Okay, so these are like meh. I actually want to show you what happened as a result of me going back and forth with Claude. So this is to demonstrate this actual workflow. Now I want to show you what I actually created with Claude and the outputs that it generates. And I'm not going to say that they're like the best titles on planet Earth, but they're like, they're better than what I would have been able to come up with on my own. So let's go ahead and use one of these. Let's go with the framework V1. I like to actually use framework V1, as the underlying prompt with the context of C10 to generate 15 titles. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and have Claude run through that. This is a different doc that I created the other day, just going back and forth. This is basically what prompted this video. I was like, I got to the point where I got some, like, look at this, like there is some, I have examples, like there's all of these different like nuances with like creating prompts that are really helpful to understand, right? We have Hormozzi's value equation as a part of this, right? Click triggers that were mentioned. So I actually really went through and like thought through like this thoroughly. It'll be funny if like these titles suck and I was just hyping that up for no reason, but let's see what's good. Okay, generated titles, master framework. Now let's look. I stopped writing AI prompts, 50x better results. These are already better. Like these first, developers hide this from business owners. I see where it's getting at, but like my AI reads 100 docs before answering ones. These are way more interesting, right? I mean, I don't know if this would perform, but like this feels like a human wrote it. And the reason why these are way better than the other ones, right, is because I spent the time to really analyze each step of the process. Are the principles actually good? Is the information where I'm creating these principles, like, is there any things that are off about that? And then I also injected my own thinking, right? So I've read countless like neuroscience, behavioral psychology books. I've studied physics in college. I'm deriving a lot of the way that I synthesize and see things, and I'm embedding it into the prompts that I create. And therefore, I'm able to embed, Melvin into every prompt and every output. And that's kind of like the interesting thing. So the people that win with AI in the future are going to be people that know how to do this well. And it just requires being an expert at whatever it is that you're trying to automate, or the craft of whatever it is that you're trying to be good at. And so, 100K from letting AI write its own prompts. These are just better. Like what coders do with AI that we've been doing wrong. I already really like these titles way better than what we created here. But again, I did this in a one-shot sort of demo that was probably like 30, 40, 50 minutes. And this, I think, probably took me a couple hours and just like really deeply thinking through all of the principles that I've come across in terms of content creation and things like that. But it's safe to say that like there are agencies that will charge you thousands of dollars to come up with like a list of YouTube title ideas, that the idea selection process is like separate, but you can see how you would be able to generalize this workflow and this process to literally anything. Like I can extend this up towards idea selection. I can extend this down the funnel towards like the script writing. You can do this for newsletters. You can do this for strategic decision making. If you embed your frameworks into it, the opportunities are limitless. It's really, really crazy what you can unlock when you really understand how to properly use these AI models and give it the right context and think through it as a partner every step of the way. Okay, so that's it for this video. Ideally, you take these titles, right, and then you go out and you post videos, and then you see real world data. Did these titles actually perform the way that I expected them to? And then you have another sort of collection of dots and reconnection of dots, a cycle in that way too, because you're going out into the real world, collecting more data. And that's the full process. To close out, let's just do a quick recap as to what we did. And I'll actually go ahead and use the outline that I have open on this side window. Okay, so what we did was we first curated high signal data. So we collected dots by identifying who are the creators that are talking about this concept, which is creating YouTube titles at the highest quality level. And again, this is a step that you can skip, which is formatting it, so you don't actually need that, but you just grab their transcripts and you organize it into your computer in a sort of folder structure here where the AI has access to it. The limitation with the current chat is actually a bunch, because even inside of GPT-5, like you're supposed to be given a 400,000 context window, but they don't actually let you paste in 400,000 tokens worth of context. And so it's actually very weird. Like you have to use the API. It's like a bunch of weird stuff. Regardless, there are actual real limitations from like the average person, the layman's usage of AI models, which is through the chat, which is why like these developer companies like don't really give you the full scope of what these AI models are capable of. They tried it with the projects and the file structures there, but really where the secret sauce is inside the CLI tools, because the developers that are using these AI models are using them in the most advanced way possible. And so what we did was we used either Cursor CLI, OpenAI Codex, or Claude Code. Claude Code is the thing that I recommend, at least today. Like maybe these other companies catch up, but Claude Code currently is like king. We extracted all the transcripts. We placed them into a very organized file structure so that we can give the assistant access to these files. And now we have the AI assistant that has access to a bunch of context, and we can use the context specifically by tagging very specific things. So if I wanted to generated YouTube titles, I can tag that specifically and it has that in context. And then we also used Whisper Flow to speak our thoughts out loud to bypass the latency that's just required with typing with your fingers, and it just appears right there. Raycast as well, there are scripts that you can run. So if I wanted to get a transcript, you can write scripts. Like these are all things. And by the way, you can have an AI model live inside of this thing too. So if you're not using AI to the fullest extent possible in every single aspect of your workspace and how you do work and workflows, you're going to fall behind, because there are people that are obsessed with this stuff that are just not going to wait. They're going to go ahead and use this stuff. They're going to craft the best prompts with the best context engineering practices. They're going to use the models in the way that they're intended, the way that developers are using them, and they're just going to run laps. And so ideally, this video helps maybe a couple people open their eyes to what is possible with AI models, and hopefully that you don't use these in like the very slim use cases that they're currently being used. So that's it for this one. Until next time, take care.